I'd like to welcome everybody to the SMRP Ontario Chapter's webinar series. Tonight we're going through Pillar 2, which is optimizing asset reliability in the pharmaceutical industries. The presentation will be put on by Jesus Safonte, who I've known for quite a while. I introduced to him as part of PMAC, and where I was actually given one of his books, the RCM-R book, RCM Reengineered. And at the time, I didn't understand what RCM was. I thought it was just do maintenance in a reliable fashion. And that book actually really changed the look on what reliability really was. So it'll be brought up later on in the presentation, or at the end of the presentation. So I highly recommend looking at that. But today we're not focusing on per se. What we're looking at is how we can bring in optimizing asset liabilities in a very specific industry, pharmaceutical. So with that, I would like to introduce Jesus. Turn over the microphone or the camera to you, and we'll get started with the presentations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to my colleagues in the pharma industry and the industry of hope, I call it. And I have had a great time working for them in the past. And I had the chance to work with companies like Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, Bristol Myers Squibb, and AbbVie, and for the maintenance department and reliability, and also to belong to the groups, the MOC teams, for example, management of change, validation teams. And it was a great experience back there in the 90s. And since 2001, our organization has been closely working with the pharma industry. So let's get started. So we are going to speak about optimizing assets reliability, especially for pharma assets. And we want to speak about reliability, of course. We want to speak about how to optimize reliability in this environment of the pharma assets. And at the end, I would like to give you some information on how to do it, let's say, in a way that it is very effective, so we can have effective maintenance plans for keeping up the reliability at optimal levels. So we are going to speak about reliability. Yes, we are going to speak about reliability across the life cycle of assets, especially at the project and the operational phase of the life cycle. And at the end, we will be speaking about a holistic approach for it. So let's get started. Let's speak about reliability. What reliability is. Many people speak about reliability, and it is all about certainty. Certainty of what? Certainty of accomplishing a mission. What type of mission we are talking about here? It is a mission for the assets to fulfill functions as established by its users. So reliability is all about trust, it's all about hope, it's all about certainty that we are going to accomplish that mission. So there, first, reliability is measurable. We can measure it. There are a couple of ways of doing so. It is good to know that reliability is something that is built into the asset by design. And we can measure it, of course, in terms of probability of the asset to fulfill those missions we talked about. It is 100% at zero time when we start using the asset, and it will get reduced with time. So there are a couple of ways of measuring reliability. If somebody asks me, Jesus, how do you measure the reliability, for example, of a simple component? I will tell you, yes, we can do it. If you're talking about a simple indivisible component, we can use the Weibull distribution before doing so. So, and by doing so, you will only understand how reliability gets lost with time, but also you will have an idea of how the component fails by understanding exactly the physics of the failure through some parameters that we determine when we do the analysis, like the beta, for example. Shape parameter would tell us you are having a wear out type of failure or you are having a premature failure. And this is very important information for us to make the decisions from the maintenance standpoint and also from the reliability standpoint. If we are talking about complex assets, assets that are comprised of many components, multi-type of components asset, we will do it a little bit differently. We can use, for example, the exponential distribution because failures tend to be more random. And for random failures, this distribution fits very well. So in here, we may be using the MTBF of the whole system as the scale parameter, and we will be able to determine, to understand what is the probability of failure or the survival uh, function of this asset. So this is, well, how reliability engineers uh, measure reliability. Sometimes it makes more sense to us just to evaluate MTBF. And doesn't matter how you do it. So MTBF will give you a good idea. The longer the MTBF, the better the reliability of that asset. And I just wanted to introduce what reliability is. It is, well, the ability of the assets for fulfilling their functions. And now let's speak about pharmaceutical assets. So how do you think, when you think about a pharma asset, what do you have in your mind? I would like to know because I know there are folks here that don't work in the pharma asset and they wonder how pharma assets look like. So I wish to tell you a little bit about pharma assets. So there are many different contexts. So there are many different types of assets within the pharma industry. For example, you might find some assets like this. This is the pharma asset. There are no HVAC requirements. As a matter of fact, many of these plants, and I had the chance to work at a couple of them, use no air conditioning systems for the reactors area. So in here, we manufacture the active ingredient. So this is the very first step and of the whole pharma process, and there is no HVAC. So maybe you were looking for some kind of clean room with a lot of HVAC systems and stuff. This is a pharma asset. Maybe you were looking for something like this, right? This is in a room in which we have a tablet compression system or unit. We have an ISO 8 type of clean room. We are controlling temperature, we are controlling humidity and particles. So this is also a pharma asset. How about this one? This is the solvent recovery unit in the outdoors. So there is no HVAC requirement. But what's important of this asset? So we are reusing solvents. These solvents were if were in contact with the active ingredient at some point, and we want to recover them to reuse them. It will give you a lot of leverage economically to the company. This is also a critical process, and this is again a pharma asset. But you were looking for something like this. This is one of the most stringent process from the HVAC standpoint in the pharma industry. This is a lyophilization process in which we use ISO 5 clean rooms. So there are a variety of assets that you can see in the pharma industry, a variety of operating contexts, and we should take that into account when talking maintenance and reliability of the assets. Here in the medical devices, uh, manufacturing, we have also, for the most part, ISO 8 type of clean rooms. Now that we have spoken about assets, the different types of assets that we have in the pharma industry, let's talk a little bit about the particularities of the pharma industry. Why this industry is so special. There are a couple of reasons for that. Let's see them. First one is that these products manufactured in the pharma industry somehow will get into your body. So they are going to be administered to humans or animals somehow. And there are about 40 ways that this product can be administered into our bodies by conjunctiva, by trachea, by intestines, by bursa, by heart, by mouth, and many others. I was searching for ways these products are administered, and what I was amazed, there are more than 40 different ways that these products will get into your body. So we are talking about a very critical type of goods for humanity. There is a GMP system. A GMP system is used to safeguards product quality for making sure there is no adulteration, mislabeling, etc. And there is also a QA system to back up the GMP system to make sure that everything is designed, developed according to the GMP system. So what else? We have a qualification and validation process where we document everything done from design to performance qualifications, just to make sure that the GMP system is accomplished so that we can comply with. So there are many particularities in the pharma industry that make it so special, different, and unique. So when we are using assets after they are validated, and you want to make any change to the assets, to the process, to the procedures, etc., you have to go through a management of change process where there is a multidisciplinary team evaluating these changes to make sure that there is no problem with the product quality and you can go ahead with those changes. So these are a couple of aspects that make the pharma industry very unique, and that we maintenance and reliability professionals working directly and also as consultants must be very aware about in order to be able to help, in order to be able to contribute in that industry. So let's speak about let me try to get rid of some pop-ups here that I'm getting in my screen. Just
Jesus, we lost your audio.
thank you. Got back?
Yeah, you're good now.
You can hear me now? Okay, thank you. So I was just trying to get rid of some pop-ups I'm getting here when people enter into the room. So let's summarize a life cycle of pharma assets. I like the way that ISPE, the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers, which I'm a member of, presents the life cycle. They just summarize it in 3 steps. So the first one, by the way, this is a very recent guide about reliability for the pharma industry done by ISPE that I would like every pharma company to use and to follow. This is really very updated and follows all the recommendations by the standards, like the ISO standards for asset management and asset risk analysis and all of that, risk management. So they're basically they present the asset life cycle of pharma uh, assets like 3 steps. So there is a project phase where you get the design done and also you do the installation, commissioning, qualification, etc. There is an operational phase where we operate, maintain the assets, and do a lot of other stuff to the assets. So a lot of service and stuff. And then there is a decommissioning phase where you get rid of the asset. So I would like to explain to you how reliability is affected in all of these, at least in the first two of these phases. So let's go to the project phase first. So we will see the hurdles in that phase, and we will see also how we can make sure that we overcome them. By the way, I will just stop for a minute, and we'll with the presentation I will and we review with you the takeaways of this uh, webinar. The first one is to learn the significant hurdles for keeping asset reliable in the pharma industries. Secondly, we will learn who determines asset criticality in the pharma industry. Third, we want to learn who should be responsible for producing effective maintenance plans here, and what type of information is needed to elaborate effective maintenance plans to keep reliability at optimal levels. And lastly, we will learn how a holistic approach considering asset and risk management principles help to produce, practical maintenance tasks within the pharma industry. So we will focus our attention in these 5 takeaways, and I would like to accomplish that mission tonight. So let's go to the project phase. What we have in the project phase is that reliability is really built into the assets there. So 85% of the life cycle cost is committed there. So from the maintenance standpoint, there is little we can do to improve asset reliability. I mean, to enhance asset reliability somehow. The most we can do is to recover it, to keep it at optimal levels. But it is here really in the project phase where all the design characteristics are built into the assets. So here we is where we get all the asset requirements. The asset is going to be built, and we do all the design for reliability analysis, for putting together strategies on operation, on maintenance, life cycle cost analysis, risk assessment, etc. There is a preliminary risk assessment that must be done here at the project phase. And we wish this happen in every pharma plant facility. So here is where we do all the abilities type of analysis, the reliability analysis, the maintainability analysis, etc are supposed to be done at this phase of the assets life cycle. So the design for reliability assessment evaluates all the requirements, like, for example, safety requirements, like the operational context. These project engineers have to be aware of the context, operational context the asset will be exposed to, and all the technologies that will be required to uh, support the asset operation, like PDM technologies, instrumentation, etc., are supposed to be analyzed here at this phase. So all these guides that I'm talking to you about are, you know, let's say recommended by, for example, by the ISPE guide, and also a there are general rules and good practices for engineering, reliability engineering. So there are many studies that are made at the project phase that we will benefit from them later on during the operational stage of the asset, where most of us work at. So there is an analysis that it is very often skipped, and it is of big relevance here. So it is the ACA, or the asset criticality analysis. What they do here is that they identify risks, and I will tell you something about risks. So when you do risk analysis, you need to understand the company goals, because risk is no other thing than uncertainty of attaining goals, of achieving goals. So these project engineers should understand very well what the mission, what the goals of the company are and how these assets are going to contribute to attain them. So there is a preliminary risk analysis. And one of the benefits of doing a risk analysis at this phase is of the one of understanding what kind of strategy, what kind of process we're going to use to develop maintenance tasks for those assets. So there is an asset criticality classification that is recommended by some guides, like the ISPE guides, for example. Pharma assets should be classified into 5 types, ranging from very low criticality to high criticality. So remember that this is based on the risks, based on the relevance for attaining goals, and you can use different types of resources to put together a maintenance plan. If you had, for example, very high or significantly high criticality, the recommendation, straightforward recommendation is apply RCM to them. So RCM is a process to develop failure consequence management processes for critical assets. If you have a medium criticality, then you can use a less rigorous process, like we call it quick maintenance. So you can do something like FMEA, or you can do some other type of analysis that is not as rigorous as the RCM. And if you have very low criticality, you can have just some checklists, you can have some RTF, you can apply RTF run to failure to those assets. So this is one of the benefits of doing ACA, asset criticality assessment, at the very beginning of the assets life cycle at the project phase. So there are also a lot of regulatory requirements that you should be aware of. You should be aware of, and no matter what kind of criticality you have in your system, there will always be some requirements that you have to comply with. So bear in mind that regulatory requirements abound in the pharma industry. So this is pretty much a recommendation that is done in the ISPE guide, and that there are some good practices out there and that will recommend you to follow. So the straightforward thing is, for high criticality assets, we are going to do a risk analysis with a high gain type of methodology like the RCM. So what kind of hurdles you can find, typical ones at the project phase? The first one is skipping those relevant analysis. And when you do service, when you do consultancy at the operational phase, very often you ask for those analysis. I'm going to do, for example, an RCM analysis, an ACA analysis. I will like to know what has been done in the past. So I will require, you have any ACA analysis, a preliminary analysis from the project phase? And it is sad to say, but most of the time that doesn't exist. And that is something that this is a very important hurdle that you pretty much find very often. So it's keeping the ACA analysis, the preliminary RCM analysis, and all the abilities analysis is something that is very, very common, more than we wanted. And also, we perceive many times a disconnect from the design teams to the operation and maintenance people. There is a lot of feedback that these people, that work day in and day out with the assets can give you, just for improving your asset reliability from the start. So this is something that we see very often. And third, during the validation, we would like to see more involvement of maintenance and engineering people to avoid things such as having validated the like Rotarian equipment close to critical speeds and things like that, that there is engineering needed to understand. So these are the three like more frequent hurdles that we see happening in the pharma industry affecting asset reliability. So what about I would like to bring some of the examples, real examples on the project phase. So first, I remember a cargo elevator design flaw that cost a lot of money to a company. They constructed a four-story building, and the design team decided to make it operate up to the third floor, ruling out the fourth floor, which was the roof. So they evaluated and they thought that there is no need to go up to the floor, up to the fourth floor. And you know what? In operations, there were daily operations of taking materials to the fourth floor, and they didn't have a means to do it, so they had to rent a crane daily for $1,000 per day, and at the end they had the need to acquire a crane to train a mechanic to operate the train and carry all of those costs. You know that 10, 15 years later, they paid like 20 times more that would have costed, to just to do the right design. So this type of decisions, just for not having a life cost analysis study, so it is hurting the industry. Also, I remember another case, a wastewater treatment plant pump, some design flaws, and the reason was very simple. So the design team didn't ask for feedback from the floor people, from operation and maintenance people on mechanical seals, and they installed the wrong seal. Seals were breaking, from the start, and that caused a lot of delays. So the reason for that was just not getting the opinion, not consulting maintenance and operations. So these are like kind of actual real cases that happen because of these hurdles. I remember this other case, a tumble dryer installation flaws that caused the startup of a building to delay for a lot of days. And in this case, the reason was not having a competent contractor, some contractor that knew about precision maintenance enough to just adjust all the backlashes of open gears. There were enormous open gears that needed to be calibrated. Uh, the backlashes needed to be adjusted adequately, and just the contractor didn't know how to do it, and maintenance ended up doing the job and moving resources to do that and to avoid further delays. So these are kind of some kind of hurdles that we have experienced along the years that could have been avoided if during the project phase we did things differently by the book, by the guides, and all of these analysis be done. So let's go to the operational phase. What kind of hurdles we see in the operational phase? How is reliability affected in the operational phase? Let me, before going there, remind you that reliability is already built into the asset. It is a characteristic of design. So there is nothing we can do to improve reliability beyond the design reliability that is already built in. So here in the operational assets, in the operational phase of the assets, the best thing we can do is to recover reliability, keep reliability at optimal levels. Yes, sometimes we recommend some redesign tasks to improve reliability, but that is not done exactly with maintenance, but with design changes. So there is a very important aspect here during the operational phase. We people are the ones operating equipment and maintaining equipment. So they have to be knowledgeable. Training is vital here. And there is a concept that we forget about, that we sometimes rule out, and in reliability it is very important. And it is who is the owner of the asset, because the owner of the asset bears a lot of responsibility. Asset owners can be everywhere. You have asset owners from the process, assets from facilities, utilities, labs. So there is owners everywhere. And we know that the owner of the asset is the one responsible for doing many things, and also for telling us what is the performance level that that asset has to fulfill. So with regards to training, it is vital that operating people understand, of course, the manuals, emergency procedures, TPM, a concepts, RCA, that they understand the process risks. And you will not see ACA done pretty often, but you will see process FMEA. So sometimes when I do our RCM analysis or our reliability analysis in the pharma industry, we ask for, let's see if there is some previous RCM analysis done or an ACA done. You don't find it too often, but you do find process FMEAs. And in the process FMEA is where you understand the risks associated with the product quality, right? So let's discuss the process FMEAs with operating people so they can understand the risk associated with operating those assets. So what about maintenance? We need our maintainers to understand the industry very well. Of course, GMP, the PSM regulatory requirements, and of course, the bread and butter of maintenance, PDM, precision maintenance, lubrication, etc. How about maintenance staff? These guys, we need to equip them very well with reliability optimization tools. The tools that are proactive, like RCM, like ACA, some reactive tools that we need to use once in a while to get things done correctly, to correct things, and also the PDMs and maintenance management. Yeah, we need to understand that very well. Reliability is not going to get better out of the sudden. Depend on people, depend on a motivated workforce, and training is part of motivating people. Let them know, let them be competent on what they have to do. So what about asset criticality assessment? How relevant is to do an asset criticality assessment during the operational phase? Sometimes I ask for when we are called to do some consulting work at a pharma plant. I ask my colleagues there, do you have a asset criticality assessment done on this? Yes, we've done it. We did it like 15 years ago, and we have here the results, and this is what we use day in and day out in the company. So we have this. So good. Let me. And sometimes this is the way we do it. And I just wanted to clarify that asset criticality is something dynamic. It evolves with time, and the analysis that we did like 10, 15 years back may not be applicable today. Assets have changed, operational contexts have changed maybe, and we need to evaluate it. But who determines asset criticality? So this is the second point here. We already discussed the first takeaway, which was the hurdles for keeping assets reliable. Second, the takeaway is who determines asset criticality. So asset criticality is determined by a competent multidisciplinary team. It is not the endeavor of the reliability people alone or the maintenance people. So it is remember that criticality analysis is about risks, and risks is about goals. So we have to have a multidisciplinary team that know the risks associated with the company goals. So there are quality type of risks, there are maintenance type of risks, there are engineering, there are EHS type of risks. So we need to have everybody on board to do that analysis. And it is highly recommendable that we use middle management. It is highly advisable that middle management put together that criteria. Why middle management? Because these folks in middle management understand both very well: the company goals, the company uh, goals, and also the day-to-day activities. So they may be able to speak both languages and to put together a comprehensive matrix to be applied to all the assets. So how is performed an asset criticality analysis at the operational phase? So we already know that it is the endeavor of a competent team. So if we do have a previous ACA analysis from the project phase, let's use it as a starting point. But now let's review it with the current company goals in mind. So what is today's reality of the business? Which are our goals today, and how these pieces of equipment that we have here are relevant to accomplish them? So bear in mind that asset criticality evolves with time. So today's reality may be different. So we will have to select business and asset drivers according to today's reality, right? And we need to agree on a criticality matrix. So the work of this team with a competent facilitator will be to produce, to develop, and an asset criticality assessment matrix to be applied to the assets and determine the relevance, their criticality. So what are the benefits of doing so? Why doing an asset criticality analysis? Why bother, to doing that? The benefits are numerous. So the first one is you will have a very good idea of what kind of process you need to develop maintenance tasks for your asset. Secondly, you will be prioritizing your day-to-day work with criticality in mind. You will be able to identify critical spares, manage better your backlogs. You will be making all your decisions based on you can prioritize all decisions based on criticality. You will be optimizing your resources. You will be putting your resources where the company needs them according to criticality. So how about maintenance tasks? How do maintenance tasks, how are they relevant to keep reliability at optimal levels? So who's responsible for ensuring assets have effective maintenance tasks? If you are the owner of a car or of your house, you are responsible for getting your car maintained, right? You are responsible for getting advice about maintenance. Same here. So the asset owner bears this responsibility, should make sure his or her asset is taken care of as regards to maintenance, right? And that person must be actively involved in the process of finding the proper task, maintenance task for his or her assets. So again, a multidisciplinary team with a process people, maintenance people, reliability engineers, QC, and AHS must work together to develop those plans. Why is that? Why am I saying too much a maintenance, a team? Why this is a teamwork? Because if we are using a risk management approach, we need to know, we need to have people that know about those risks. And this team is you know, comprised of people that are really knowledgeable about the risks those assets pose to the company goals from different standpoints. So we will be tackling not only a process type of risks, but also regulatory risks, also risk on on safety, etc. So maintenance tasks have to be unique, have to be special. They should have optimal tasks should have some characteristics. Which are those? The first one, I've spoken about that too much already. They have to be created about with a multidisciplinary team approach. You know, bringing all the possible scenarios, all the possible risks those assets would be exposed to. Secondly, they have to reduce risks. The purpose of maintenance tasks is to reduce risks, eliminate risk, reduce them to tolerable levels. So we should first identify those risks and then figure out how to tackle them. So these tasks have to be targeted to specific potential failures. So besides understanding the consequence of the failures very well, we need to figure out what are the possible causes of these failures so we can determine the right path to tackle them. So these are characteristics that the task must have in order to be effective. And this last thing that I will present here about tasks is that they have to be accepted by the owner. So the owner is the one telling, yes, I understand the risks, and we as a team decided to do this task, and I'm convinced that that task is good enough to reduce the risk to tolerable level. I can live with that. So when we have operation on board to develop our maintenance tasks, we won't have any problem moving forward to getting those tasks approved. Never rule out QC. So I was doing a reliability analysis a couple of weeks ago. I was at a major US pharma plant and doing an RCM analysis. And prior to going to the plant, I asked a representative of QC to be there, the quality department. If we have the quality department on board and we evaluate, we have the active them there helping us actively, many of the risks associated with product quality will have been already analyzed. And it will be easier for us to move forward with that program, with that new maintenance program. So what kind of information, this is the next takeaway, what kind of information we need to put together a comprehensive maintenance program in the pharma industry? First one, I will make a lot of emphasis. I will stress a lot. You need to know your business. You need to know the goals, the relevant goals. You need to know how relevant is this asset to attain these goals. So we can skip that. So reliability engineers, maintenance engineers have to understand the business very well. Data. We have to rely more on data when we make decisions. So what kind of data? Failure event data. That's very important. Reliability analysis is all about analyzing data, failure data. So MTBF, if you say that reliability is related to MTBF, so MTBF means mean time between failures. So we are analyzing somehow failure. So we need to understand data from all of these sources that I present here. So also technical information, of course, we are technical people. We need to understand the internals. We need to understand all the details about the design, the P&ADs, the drawings, etc. So also we need to understand very well how is the asset doing today. All of those KPIs about the asset, about the process the asset is in. And furthermore, you have to understand what are the stakeholders' expectations about the asset. So not only understanding how is the asset doing today, but how are the expectations with relation to that asset and what is the gap there, and how we will be able to put together a plan to bridge that gap. And you will see that not only maintenance tasks are going to be needed to bridge that gap, but also redesign type of recommendations with regards to the same machine and with regards to practices. So let's see here what kind of hurdles affect the reliability of the operational phase. We'll see a couple here. First one is relying too much on OEMs for maintenance. So we know that we get a lot of tasks, a lot of information, really important information from the OEM on the assets. But there are many different type of contexts, and all the assets are not equally critical. So we need to rely more on facts, rely more on risk analysis, especially for highly critical assets. So don't rule out the operating context. Don't copy and paste a maintenance plan from other assets in the plan. Just from the plan, just analyze risk to do the analysis. Keeping the risk management approach. Maintenance doing maintenance tasks alone on their own without the multidisciplinary team approach, uh, a disengagement, a disconnect from company goals again. So these tasks are using for reducing risks. They have to be effective to reduce risk to tolerable levels in order for the company to accomplish the mission they have and in for which we are using these assets. So the lack of training on maintenance and reliability engineering and poor management practices are hurdles that hurt, the assets reliability at the operational phase, and poor practices as well. So I've seen things, that sometimes I can't believe. And this is not only in the pharma industry, but generally speaking. So you might find somebody once in a while that doesn't believe in, for example, in PDM. Say, no, I'm not up for doing predictive maintenance here. So, gee, we have been working with predictive maintenance from the 90s, and some people here from the 70s, from the 80s, and it is generally accepted, that PDM is good for assets. So, and you once in a while see management reluctant to move forward with reliability analysis, moving forward with using PDM with their assets. That's something that we do and hurts, the asset reliability at the operational phase. Now let's turn our attention to a holistic approach. How can we improve, how can we produce effective maintenance tasks for critical assets in the pharma industry? We're talking now highly critical assets, assets in which we rely on for attaining our goals every day. So first of all, let's have data integrity. Let's depend more on data, on good data. Let's ensure that we have good data to analyze for improving our decision making. So in the pharma industry is very well known for investigation, for science. So there is a lot of decisions, a lot of studies done before a vaccine is announced to be out. So there is lots of studies done. Let's do the same in reliability engineering. Let's depend more on data than on opinion. So let's base our opinions on data. Let's make sure that we have reliable data to make our decisions. So let's do that. This is the very first recommendation for having a holistic approach to attain better maintenance tasks, more effective maintenance tasks. Let's understand asset criticality first. Before even talking about maintenance for an asset, let's understand its criticality, its impact, its relevance for the goals to be met. So this is of high importance here. So before even thinking about maintenance for an asset, let's understand the relevancy of that asset. You will end up doing less work, I tell you. So let's understand the business for us to select the appropriate business drivers in our criticality matrix and assets drivers, and also uh, understand that asset criticality evolves with time as say the asset ages, as the operational context changes, as the asset usage plans for usage change, etc., configuration, technology, etc. So let's understand how critical is the asset first before daring to, for example, copy and paste a maintenance program from other assets or even attempting to put together a plan. So what else do we have here? Understand the asset mission. What is the asset there for? Let's maintenance people understand how relevant, how this asset is supposed to perform in order to do what it's supposed to do. So let's understand the technologies involved. Let's understand all the regulatory aspects about the asset. And let's understand the performance levels according to the user. So maybe we think that the asset must do this and that according to the design specifications, but the requirements of the owner are less demanding, and we may be doing too much work with maintenance. And remember that I always like to use this comparison. And maintenance as tasks is they are going to be good as long as they are needed. So it is like medicines, talking about the pharma industry. You use medicines that you need because there is a condition, prompting their use. And if you use a medication that you don't need, you may have side effects that are undesirable and you don't have any benefit. So the same with maintenance tasks. If you apply tasks that are not needed, those tasks may induce failures that you don't want. So let's understand what is needed. Fourth, understand what could cause assets to fail. Sometimes we think or we only consider natural deterioration. So we maybe are so naive that we think that let's be ready for the asset deterioration and our maintenance plan is around that. But there are design flaws that, are causing failures today, and we are not tackling those. There are human errors that live with us, those errors, and cause problems. So we need to attack, we need to bear in mind that we need to solve all these problems. If we, for instance, review the STI J81011 standard about RCN, it says that there are three types of failure modes that you should take into consideration. First one is natural deterioration. The second one is design flaws, because there are design flaws, and we need to live with them. The equipment assets have them. And the third one is human errors. So we need to be aware of all those. If you, for instance, identify failure mode, which is an event causing a failure, you better understand its mechanism. So understand how the failure occur. Let's train our people to not just say this broke. Let them understand how things break. What's the mechanism behind those failures, and they will be better equipped to avoid those failures afterwards. And not only understanding how things fail or how things could fail, but understanding why they might fail. So we may be more have more ability to spot like design type of failures, failure causes, a fabrication type of failures, age type of failures. Things also break by wear and tear. There are also management type of things. We don't have the right procedures. We don't have the right tools. We don't have the right training. So don't just assume that everything is going to fail by age. So let's use the risk management approach to determine failure effects. So this approach is around the model, the risk assessment model by ISO 31,000. So what we can do here is we do an analysis, a risk assessment analysis while evaluating maintenance tasks where we can identify risk sources, we identify their causes, understand their consequences. Then we go to a second step here in the risk analysis, in the risk assessment, which is risk analysis. Let's use a quantitative approach to understand how relevant we engineers, we technologists like to see numbers, right? So let's see some numbers out there, and let's speak about probability. Let's speak about risk quantitatively, and so we understand the nature and level of the risk. And lastly, let's evaluate those risks with a good, well-designed criteria. So we understand if the risk levels are high, are medium, are low, and then we may decide better what kind of treatment we are going to apply to those risks. So there is a lot of room for improvement in not only in the pharma but in many industries with regards to the use of risk management. So we apply risk management a lot to other processes, to the quality issues. We apply a lot of risk management approach to production issues, but not too much for developing failure consequence management policies to tackle them. So let's do something like this. So you'll be able to, let's say, identify risk sources, risk event. So this is the mission of the asset, and this is what it is not doing. All of these events are possible. Let's understand how the failure mechanisms, what kind of failure mechanisms are related to them. We have mechanical, electrical, material type of failure mechanisms producing these events. Let's try to understand how they could happen, the reasons behind the scenes. Oh, there could be design flaws, there could be age type of problems, there could be design OEM and M, which is operation and maintenance errors and so forth. So we can understand management things. So we don't have the right procedure, we don't have the right practices, etc. Let's then apply a risk management approach in which we can somehow grade those potential root causes and upfront understand how critical they are. So we can filter out things that we don't have to worry about too much because they are very low in criticality, and let's then prioritize our maintenance efforts based on our risk. That's how things are supposed to work when we use a risk management approach. So And one of the last things is that I wanted to, to just stress about this is there is some reluctance in using reliability math, in using reliability engineering, a reliability engineering approach for selecting tasks and for calculating the frequencies. I wonder why is there a hesitation to use engineering? So I recommend you to use RCM decision diagrams, proven diagrams for letting you not only select the right maintenance tasks according to the physics of the failure scientifically, but also to be able to evaluate and justify all of them. No maintenance tasks should be there unjustified. There must be a reason for using every single maintenance task. So risk confers task is the result of something that we need to do for just reducing those risks to tolerable levels. So let's do this analysis. Every task have to be have to be all the tasks have to be evaluated and justified. Let's use engineering analysis just to understand how things fail. Let's analyze data, actual data, current data, past data to see how components are working. So we may do better decisions based on reality, right? Let's not be afraid of using reliability math. So we know that there is a lot of research done from the quality standpoint of products, from developing products, research and development of products. Let's do the same in the maintenance. Let's do the same because we bear a lot of responsibility to keep these assets the companies are relying on for attaining the goals, the fantastic goals that we are pursuing now during these times. So then after we have done all these plan, we put the plan together, we have our tasks, we make sure that all the tasks are capable of reducing those risks to tolerable level and so forth. We calculated everything very well based on facts, based on data. Then we have to monitor ourselves. We have to monitor the performance of these pieces of equipment. So you have to review once in a while these results. Once in a while, you will have to do some root cause analysis because things don't happen as planned sometimes. Once in a while, we will have a failure and we will have to dig into the details to understand how it occurred. We have to keep, track of our KPIs to make sure we are on track, we are doing well. So the plan has to be deployed and then we have to grade ourselves, right? Grade how we are doing. And there is a set of KPIs that will tell us, yes, you're doing the right thing, you have to make adjustments and so forth. So I think that I'm pretty much done with the presentation. It is time now for a quick summary and some questions. Let me do a quick summary uh, of the presentation of what we have talked about. Maybe there are some folks that enter a bit later and miss some of the presentation. So at the beginning, we spoke about reliability. We defined reliability, and we also spoke about how what kind of assets, different assets we have in the pharma industry. We spoke about some unique aspects of the pharma industry, making important, relevant at all people wanting to support the industry, internal people, all consultants have to be aware of those, have to master those. So also we presented the summary of the life cycle of pharma assets according to the ISPE model, and which is three phases: project phase, operational phase, the commission. We explain what there are some things, some activities happening in these stages Like we have the design, the concept, we have the installation, qualification, validation. In the project phase, they are supposed to be done. They have to. We are supposed to do some reliability analysis there in the project phase that will the company will benefit from later on during the operational. We spoke about hurdles affecting the reliability at the project phase, the lack of analysis, this keeping those analysis disconnect, for example, from the floor, from people, doing the work, the maintenance and operations, having that feedback is really important for improving reliability, for improving, making more robust assets at the design stage. And we also spoke about the hurdles during the operational phase, like skipping the risk management approach, like not using, that approach, and also relying too much on original equipment manufacturers and so forth. We also spoke about a holistic view in which we base our decisions based on facts, based on data. We also use an asset and risk management approach. We understand very well how assets fail, how they could face, and we encourage the use of reliability engineering and reliability math for doing proper calculations and making proper decisions on asset reliability and on especially on maintenance tasks. So this is a quick fast summary of what we spoke about tonight. I look forward to get your questions, and if there are some questions there in the chat, I will take a look at them. If somebody can give me a hand with that from the co-host here, I will appreciate that. So.
Yeah, I'd like to take the time to thank you for the presentation, Jesus. It was very thorough, very it hit home. I'm in the pharma industry myself, so a lot of it you said really hit home there. Some of the other stuff, like especially the non-justified tasks, because we live in a regulated world, a lot of time tasks are put in for CAPAs because deviations occurred, and we don't know where they came from. There's no value to those. So I like the fact that you brought back to the failure modes. If there's no failure mode, then why are you doing these tasks, right? GMP regulations, they really drive us. They drive a lot of decisions that we make in pharma. And the cross-functional teams, like I can ask 10 different people what their most important assets and get 10 different answers. So having a cross-functional team to rate the assets is the only way to go in this industry. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time for the presentation. There are a few questions. So this says that's true, except quality is not a factor that is considered in the industries that I work in. Okay, this is a comment. So here, most failures are random, 78%. 78%. Setting a time-directed task in place of these equipment items does not improve conditional probability of failure. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, can you say that again? Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
Most failures are random, 78% of them.
Okay, that's right.
So setting a time-directed task in place of these equipment items doesn't improve the conditional probability of failure.
Oh yes, that's right. So one of the let's say contributions of the aviation industry when they started RCM back in the 60s and the 70s is that most failures related to rotating equipment in movement, any some type of movement, could be a rotation movement or other type of movement, but dynamic equipment, most of the failure were random and also premature. So there is no relation, there is no clear relationship between age and failure probability. So if we rely on time-based maintenance for most of our maintenance tasks, we are basically wasting our time because there is no correlation. So sometimes there are also a lot of induced failure. I mean that maintenance induced failures for the fact that we are applying the wrong type of maintenance. I totally agree with Mr. Johnson.
Okay, what is the reason behind resistance to implementing PDM and condition monitoring? Is there a history of poor applied technology that undermines confidence, or a historical preference for rapid equipment replacement or defense through redundancy?
I see. I thank you very much for your comment and the Rick. I appreciate your comment. I've seen that bad experience sometimes or wrongly done implementations is one of the reasons, like bad experience. Secondly, lack of training, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding how things fail, and those are the main reasons for not implementing PDM. Because companies that implement PDM the right way, they will have a lot of benefits, and that is something that is not under discussion here. Thanks, Rick, for your comment and your question.
Okay, why are cybersecurity hacks not being viewed as potential failures?
Why cybersecurity hacks? Let's see this one.
Are not being viewed as a potential fail.
They are really, and a potential to fail. There are risks associated with that, and one of the systems, IT systems in the pharma industry is really strict. I know that they work, very hard to keep data safe, and there is, of course, a risk to lose data. There is also risk to be cyber attacks. That's a life type of risk. That is a latent type of risk that has to be tackled. That has to be as as taken very serious. So this is also a type of risk that we need to tackle, that we need to evaluate in the pharma and in many other industries.
Okay. How has pharma viewed the possibility of digital twins versus PDM? Or do they see the digital twin as identical to PDM?
You know what? I like all of the technologies, and I also like the basis. So there is a lot of need to do the basics. So there are many plants. It is sad to say, but you know about that, Mike. You yourself you have worked for the pharma industry from many standpoints. You have had a lot of different hats, and in the pharma industry we find lots of technology, high-end technology in production, in with regards to quality, but sometimes in maintenance, there is a lot of work to do to get up to speed with the basic things. So I think that maintenance management, we have to stress, a lot of emphasis on, and also on the basics of reliability. And of course, we need to escalate and continue moving towards, the last trends in technology.
Should we do criticality analysis based on the dominant failure modes or worst case scenario?
Okay, there are different approaches, and the multidisciplinary team has to decide what is the base, what's the best for the company. And important thing is to use there are two things here. You can do it either at the project phase or at the operational phase. If you do it at the project phase, you have a lot of assumptions to make. And if you do it at the operational phase, you have data to rely on. And you can use whatever approach is more suitable, and it is up to the team to decide.
Okay. there's a lot of questions about cybersecurity, which I think you have addressed.
No.
Should we be structuring the data before starting criticality analysis?
Structuring the data for criticality analysis. Okay, if we are talking asset criticality analysis, so there are a couple of things that we need to be aware of. We need to understand very well. The first one is we have to be aware of the company's objectives. So understand very well what is the overall, what are the overall objectives of the company. And once we understand that, we need to then identify how relevant is my asset to attain those goals. And we then all the data with respect to failures, if we are doing it at the operational phase, we need to understand that many companies as asset drivers use MTBF, for example, how frequent the asset is failing. Can use also remaining life, depending on the type of asset, especially for static assets. May use failure rate as a data, but as a KPI. But of course, we need to rely on data and on field data, on operation data about the asset. So with regards to, we need to take into account also the quality risks. Have we had, for example, the issues of quality of the product with regards to that asset? Have we had, for example, accidents or environmental issues in chemical plants that we handle a lot of solvents, and some of them are difficult to handle. They pose some challenges to do. So all those types of info data we need to take into account. And on the fly, I would like to answer a question related to that. Somebody asked there in the presentation in the chat, if you take into account like bottlenecks, like things like that. Of course, there is a difference, in criticality when you have the luxury of having, for example, parallel systems. You have backup systems. You have a redundant equipment. So there is a lot of luxury, and this will lower the criticality of the asset. If you have a single reactor, if you have a single tablet press unit, and that particular piece of equipment fails and there is no other to rely on, that is a critical asset. So all those weak points have to be taken into account.
Okay, that was my next thing about the single point of vulnerability. I think this is the last question. There is a difference between the general asset life cycle, general asset life cycle for 4 stages, and for the life cycle for pharma asset at 3 stages.
No, it is just, no, it applies the same thing. I just like the way that the pharma guide, let's say, summarized it, but the stages are the same. But I find a very practical way in summarizing it in 3 steps, and because there are sub steps inside these 3, right? So it's asset management, it's the same steps, but for practical purposes, it has been presented like that.
Okay, and a comment from Nick. If any maintenance program is to succeed, a saving money figure has to be attached to it. This figure has to be based on similar programs already executed on the same very exact science. Fully functional CMMS should provide this. I use SAP, and it's easy to derive the supporting information in order to justify similar initiatives. Results have to be touchable. So I guess from this, how does your the holistic view fit into the CMMS?
Yes, there are a couple of things here. Of course, the CMMS is of utmost important here because we will have all the asset history. We will have all the, it's a means for us to reach out and get all the info. We need all the history there, but also the way we configure the CMMS is really important to help us improving reliability, to help us doing analysis. For example, the way we use failure codes for doing analysis later on for reliability growth, the way we document a spare part usage, for example, the way we do every type of documentation is plays a vital role in reliability. So having a very well managed CMMS system, very well used, gives a lot of leverage to the company. And let me tell you something, companies, generally speaking, don't even use 20% of all the capabilities out there about a CMMS system. So if we were able to use it better, if we were able to align our CMMS usage with the guides of reliability, we will be in a better position with respects to asset management in general.
Okay, just had another one pop in. Do insurers and insurance premiums change according to the company's approach and behaviors?
Yeah, I know about companies that pharma companies and also other companies that for just having a thermography program, for example, for inspecting their premises, their electrical equipment, the premiums get reduced. And we have a particular customers that they arranged, with the insurance company of doing themselves the program for 2 years in a row, and the third year let's bring a third party. And yes, it makes a lot of difference. Insurance companies are more comfortable because you are responsibly managing your assets, and that's good for them. That's music for their ears, right? So it is good for everyone.
Excellent. So I think that takes us through all of the questions. So on the back page here, we have all of Jesus's contact information, and you can see the cover of his book there. So if anybody wants to reach out, all the information's there. And once again, thank you very much for taking the time and putting on this presentation and linking your background and your knowledge to the pharma industry. So thank you again from the SMRP Ontario chapter.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.